Right.
Good we go. Okay. Right. Welcome everybody online and councillors here today, and a special welcome to Cindy Udstrom from the Opportunity Party. Great to have you here today, Cindy. Just for those online and for our councillors, just the purpose of these sessions is to raise issues on behalf of the people of the West Coast and seek candidate feedback on how they will respond to these issues as they are elected. The session is about 30 minutes with an opportunity for a presentation of up to 15 minutes and then 15 minutes for questions from councillors of the candidate. Just a reminder to all that there's 4 key issues we have raised and to which councillors have, to candidates and councillors have had an opportunity to input into, and they are: 1, the sustainable funding for regional New Zealand; 2, climate adaptation and community resilience; 3, biosecurity; and 4, increasing regional responsibilities. Now, these were the issues that councillors and this council deemed to be the significant issues for which to be discussed with candidates to help inform our communities in terms of those issues and how candidates are going to respond. So, Cindy, over to you.
Thank you. The presentation.
Have you got a presentation? Yep.
Cool. Yes, let's just crack on to the first slide. I've just done one basically roughly giving a rundown of some ideas that Opportunity has for each thing. So we have a internationally significant resource here, so we absolutely should expect some of the international visitors to be paying towards upkeeping that. And the visitor levy was unring fenced recently, so we would look to re-ring fence that and put the money back into looking after the assets that the international visitors are coming here to see. And the next thing, so not imposing hard caps. Rate caps don't really help. They sound good. The New South Wales example that they gave, it didn't work there either. So it's about fixing the underlying funding model and looking at ways that we can move forward together in a sustainable long-term fashion. So there are various opportunity policies that work towards that. Our tax reset benefits 70% of taxpayers, plus runs at a couple of $1 million surplus, which we can then pump back into, some of it at least, back into local communities. The healthy land and water policy encourages and rewards people for looking after their local area, their local environments. And the abundant energy policy leverages the ratepayer assistance scheme, which I know a few parties have come up with that idea. But it doesn't look bad on your books the way we want to do it, because at the end of the day, the ratepayers are paying for what's on your books, and yeah, it's about making sure that we do the best with what we've got and not overly burdening people when we can, and just listening. If you've got ideas, we want to hear them, really. A lot of our policies are not finalised, so we are open to things. We are the party that wants to listen, the party of evidence. So if we've got a good idea and it's going to work, we're all for it. That's that one. Yes, climate adaptation. So there's obviously a lot going on with the climate. So up front, if we can agree a list of who does what, then you don't end up with arguments about whether it's the Regional Council or the NZTA that has to look after the bridge, and making sure that they then do what is in their wheelhouse. So if there's a clear delineation, then everybody knows what they need to look after and they can get on and do it. There is a strong case for riparian planting and wetland restoration as part of reducing flood and erosion costs down the line, rather than just building bigger walls. Insurance retreat is another issue, so it shouldn't be all left up to the homeowner to suddenly have no insurance. There should be a fairer way of balancing between central, local insurance companies and the landowners themselves. These are the big complex issues that you can't just say a yes or no quick fix answer to. And building our infrastructure for the climate we have now, not the climate we had 30 years ago. If the bridge is washed out twice, maybe we'll build a better bridge. We're about making real progress and actually thinking things through and doing long-term planning and adaptations to reduce costs and problems in the line. Oh yeah, biosecurity. Yes, heard about the deer problem. Someone had a comment that, venison, great. No, no matter how many hunters you have out there, and people that love eating venison, there's not enough of them to fix the deer problem. And it's all interconnected. So if we can get control of things, then our farmers are better off and they're more productive. And they'll be more inclined to have their riparian planting in their wetland areas on their farms if they know that it's not going to attract pests, possums and things that they don't want near them. But it should be again a long-term plan with funding adequately funded, that doesn't get stolen and taken away every time someone wants to make the books look better. And also, supporting landowners doing their own work and community groups doing their own work as well. So rather than a community group just voluntarily doing stuff, we're looking at ways that we can actually essentially pay them potentially a fee or a bounty, perhaps. I don't know off the top of my head, but we are looking at that as part of our healthy land policy, because it is about getting everybody on the same page, getting everybody working towards the same goal, and it is all interconnected. We can't just got funding and then wonder why pests are increasing. Increasing risks. Not a line item. It is fundamental, and then it comes back to looking after our internationally significant asset that all these people want to come and see and look at and enjoy, and we want to enjoy ourselves. The regional responsibilities. So it's all well and great to say, hey, you guys do this thing without resourcing it at all or minimally. It really needs to be a joint effort between local and central about, again, who does what, and then making sure that each entity that has a responsibility is adequately resourced to perform that responsibility, and then checking that they are doing the right thing. So we're also looking at, as part of our policy still under production, we're looking at ways that we can give back when there's a new development in an area in a way that we can return some of that, the money that's collected back to the council, so that it's not only the ratepayers that are lumped with the new water costs, sewage costs, roading costs, whenever subdivision goes in. And yeah, you're not alone saying, yeah, oh, you guys decide whether someone can cut a tree down or not, and it's all your fault. No, it should be a joint. Everything should be joint, and working out who is responsible for the tree, really. The local tree. Yeah. And yes, local government reform. So the opportunity point of view is that the decision should be made as locally as possible to where it's going to affect people. So there's no point making a decision in Wellington that have no idea what's going on down here. And there's no point in people down here making a decision that affects the entire country. So yeah, we're not in the business of saying let's decentralise everything, and we're not in the business of saying let's centralise everything. And we've had a long cycle of centralisation, decentralisation coming and going. And what we would like to see is a long-term plan that takes the public along with it, and involves them at the ground level, so that so they understand where we're going, and working everything out in front so that you know where you can develop and where you cannot develop, and then not treating every development as an environmental disaster that needs to be fought. So you can say this area is ready for development, go nuts. This area is not, don't even try. And setting that out up front and making sure that everybody is on the same page about these things saves a whole lot of time down the track when people are then fighting to stop or to progress something. If we worked it out at the beginning, yeah, we could save a whole lot of pain. And yeah, that's about it. We're here for the long term. We're here to communicate, to listen, and to take the public with us, to involve them, to make sure they're involved at the beginning, and that they don't have to start protests at the end. Where by fighting everything out at the end of the process, it lends itself to the better resource to people getting the way that they want, and not the poor guy that's next door to the roadworks or whatever. He doesn't get a chance. We really want to communicate, bring people with us, listen, long-term thinking, partnership. Flopping.
Thanks, Cindy. So councillors ask questions. If I can ask you to raise your hand, and then I'll indicate so that we keep the questions in order. So Andy, you first.
So you got a few good points there, Cindy, but how do you propose to fund it?
That's still up for debate. The big one being the tax reset, which generates $4 billion spare money. I think so far we've only allocated about half of that for our economic policy. And there's other things that we're still looking at, like the returning money from new developments, ring fencing of the visible levy. There's various things that we have worked out. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but we do our numbers very well. I don't know whether you saw that. Yeah. I can't remember the guy's name. Had to go at our tax numbers, and We right here as well.
Guidance.
Yeah.
And the other thing I got a problem with is Predator free 2050. That's not affordable for the ratepayers and taxpayers to do. It's quite capable of self-funding itself.
Mhm.
But there's regulations around there that are just killing the private operator that wants to operate commercial.
Yep.
And I had a little thing in the paper the other day, and people are right behind commercialising.
Yep.
People from Taranaki ringing up, people from Dunedin sending emails, about 3 processes that are on board with it, but the regulations are just strangling.
Yeah, and so if that was fixed, then Predator free 2050 would be fine.
Well,
Insane.
you'd get that because of the self-funding and
Yep.
happen.
Yep.
Like, I mean, we just go back in history to the
Yeah.
60s and 70s. We didn't have to pay for any pest control because it was all getting done commercially.
Yes, it's got ahead of us. It's got a bit of a way from us though. So we can bring it back to a point where that can work, then yeah.
Like, we can't rely on DOC. It costs them $600,000 to kill one rat on one island.
Yeah.
Pretty dear rat.
That is an expensive rat.
Yeah.
These are things that need to be looked at and worked through. And I can't say yes or no to any particular thing. But if it is something then you say, hey, this is a way that we can move forward and do this, and it's cost neutral, then it should definitely be looked at and looked into.
Yeah.
And I'm surely it's not a silver bullet, otherwise we'd be doing it already. That's my query, I guess. So as long as we have all the information, then we can make the best decision. Because we can only ever make the best decision with the information we have at the time.
Yeah, well, there is a good reason why the venison is not exported here.
Hmm.
But anyway, thank you. That's
Andy, questions on the team?
We've got
Chris? Yep.
one on, riparian margins. You're quite keen on the idea of riparian margins alongside the rest. Native trees are taking minimum of 5 to 10, maybe 20 years to get established to be of any protection purpose along a river. But our rivers probably wipe them out before they get to the stage of being big enough and ugly enough to protect the riverbank.
Yep.
What would you say to normal constructed type riverbank protection?
So I'm just imagining you go out in a jet boat and you can see the paddocks falling into the river. So I can understand that. And yeah, you're right. You would have to essentially start quite a way back, and you would need to do potentially some stabilisation works until they got established, until the plantings got established. And that's something that the government should be assisting with. So we certainly don't expect farmers to be doing this all by themselves. It's a joint effort. Everything is a joint effort.
Peter?
Yes, and just on the who does what philosophy, that's in some of your things there, and who pays what, may I suggest, is my line of thinking. Sustained multi-year funding for pest control. The local landowners, the farmers on the coast do their share on 15% of the land they own.
Yep.
You think it's appropriate from your party's point of view that the owner of 85% of the dock estate should be paying 85% of pest control in this case?
It should be relative, yes. There should be more. That's where they are. That's where it needs to be dealt with, and they need to be adequately funded to do their job.
Your answer gets a big tick from me.
Any questions?
No, could be.
Mark? Cindy, in terms of sustainable funding for regional New Zealand, what are the priorities your party sees in terms of obtaining long-term sustainable funding from central government for local governments? What are your party's position in terms of ensuring that sustainable funding for local government?
A lot of it comes back to essentially changing the entire tax system and the entire way that we fund the country in general. And that will in turn free up more money, allow central government to leverage more of its power to do the infrastructure, so that the local councils don't need to pass that bill on so much. And yeah, it just frees up a whole lot of money that we can then leverage at the ground level, and then it comes back up again.
So can you sort of tell our community or inform our community how the Opportunities Party is going to, or what their ideas are in terms of restructuring the tax system in New Zealand?
Yeah, so the big one is a combination of a land value tax and a citizen's income or universal basic income, to rebalance the tax system, rebalance the way we use land, the way we store and sit on and don't use land, and it frees up a whole lot of value that is inherently locked up in land that doesn't generate any money by itself, like housing, for example. But something like a farm is generating value for the community and for the country.
You, Cindy? No other questions? Any questions from Daryl? No? Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Cindy, for taking the time to come and talk to us today. Very much appreciated, and no doubt those of our community who are watching online will appreciate it as well. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Good. Work.
Thank you. You too?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, no, this is my lunch break.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Thanks again for taking
Yep.
Okay, welcome to those of you who were with us in the last session and those who've just come on to this live stream. Today we have Katie Milne from the National Party with us. Welcome, Katie, and councillors. The purpose of this session today is to raise issues on behalf of the people of the West Coast and seek candidate feedback on how they will respond to these issues if they're elected. Now, this meeting will be 15 minutes for the candidate to speak and then 15 minutes for councillors to respond. And the four topics we are looking at today, and these are topics that councillors and the Regional Council have identified as significant issues for the West Coast going forward. And one is sustainable funding for regional New Zealand. 2 is climate adaptation and community resilience. 3 is biosecurity, and 4 is increasing regional responsibilities. So Katie, first of all, sustainable funding for regional New Zealand. You tell us what the National Party is going to provide us with in terms of that.
Well, I guess, first of all, I should really introduce myself. I don't know who's online.
Yep.
And
you go for it.
obviously, yeah, I'm Katie Milne and I'm a 5th generation West Coaster. And I've decided, I live at Rodamanu, which is Lake Brunner area, upstream of the lake. So I've been involved with a lot of catchment care group stuff up there over the years. Yeah, I've worked at the freezing works when my first job, and worked my way through there. Found a dairy farmer, married him. Well, engaged him actually. I've been engaged for 40 years, quite a long time. It's as good as being married. And spent a bit of time living offshore. Came home, bought the farm, and actually the resource management came in just as we bought the farm. So I've had an awful lot to do with that side of the coin. Came to a meeting in the old Grey District Council building way back when we had purchased the farm, wanted to understand about the RMA, and I was the youngest person in the room and had white hair like Annie Lennox. Everyone else in the room was probably 60 plus and had white hair like Annie Lennox. So from there, those guys grabbed me and said, we want you to stay involved with Federated Farmers. So I spent a lot of time there, gone up through the ranks, and ended up being pushed right through to being the provincial president and then the national president after I got on the board. Was on the board of Westland Milk Products. I've been on the board of Predator Free 2050 Limited, which has just been disestablished. Been on the Conservation Board on the West Coast, 2 terms. Just had to resign from that because I've taken up this role and chaired the Lake Runner Community Catchment Care Group, things like that. So I've always been involved around what I see is trying to get a fair deal for farmers, a bit of conservation mixed in there, because this is where we live, right? And we really like it. And we want it to stay as good and pristine as we can get it while we utilise and harvest what we've got around us and the abundance that's there. So I guess that's a little bit about me. Just wanted to put my hand up for this. I have been asked multiple times to stand as some sort of a representative for the West Coast and always said no. It wasn't my cup of tea, but I've got to the point where I, one, have the time to dedicate, which is always critical. And also I've got a daughter and son-in-law who have a business in the district. I've got a lot of nephews and nieces who live overseas and can't get jobs in the district. And I've got a grandson who's 8 years old. And I look at him and go, what's the future for him? What's the opportunity for him to stay on the coast if the coast isn't, utilised appropriately and got business opportunity and grows, because we really need to grow. So yeah, that's that. But this briefing, it's a bit of a tough one really, because being the candidate, I'm not really privy to a lot of policies are being released every day at the moment, as you will have all seen. So that's interesting. So really, some of it is all sort of what my views are versus what's necessary policy, which makes it really hard, because if I put feet wrong now, that doesn't bode well for how you things go forward. But going back a step, I've always fought for and been pushed up through the chain because I've fought for regional difference, because what's appropriate in other parts of the country, whether you're in Waikato's, Southland, Northland, Canterbury, is not appropriate for West Coast. And I've sat in this very room in mediation way back when we did the land and riverbed management plan with Eugenie Sage. She sat there, and I sat down there with a team from Federated Farmers and the miners and people that were pro-development for the West Coast. You know, this end you had Forest and Bird, Fish and Game, and the Department of Conservation. And they were at that stage, you know, as far leaning as you could get green. And having said that, I am a blue-green. So through those processes, it was always about why are you trying to bring down things that are problems in other parts of the country that are not here. And there's some crackers in there. Like one of the things they tried to push on us was 30-metre buffers of riparian on waterways, and that equated to being $1 billion worth of real estate up and down the west coast. If that had been initiated, and we worked around these things, found other mechanisms, other ways, and most of them were permitted activities. Like if you weren't doing conspicuous tagging or slumping, weren't causing that, you didn't need to fence the waterway. And I know that's changed with other processes later on, and there's down to a metre of different things, but we had good evidence and we could back all that up. So we kept trying to make sure those sort of things were done that way. And in the end, we got those permitted activities, and we got, you can do emergency works on your own property as well, versus just being council. If there's been flooding and things like that, you could do take gravel out of creeks and rivers, and we had the list of where and what, and we had a lot of input onto all of that sort of stuff. And it's been a shame to see the new plan sort of actually see some of that being altered, and whether it's land use or whatever. But that's why we have processes of submitting and we try to change these things. But yeah, so I guess a lot of that encompasses where my thoughts are going forward and how I will see myself trying to represent the coast within the umbrella of whatever a coalition would look like, and I may or may not be successful. Is that regional difference does matter, and you can't make one size fit all necessarily without pathways for those places that are exceptional. And I see the coast as exceptional. It's completely different. We don't have as many people. Yes, we've got a few tourists, but we don't have anywhere near the issues that a lot of areas have. We've got similar issues with flooding and some areas with conservation, tourism coming through high numbers, but generally it's quite a different kettle of fish. So yeah, that'll be what I'll try to do for the coast, is really push what we need, because that's what electorate MPs have to do, right? And that's I can see that at times when I put my hand up, I thought there's some things I don't necessarily agree with. That'll be tough to meander my way through, but I'll have to figure that out. But again, it's input from lots of you guys, and all the other entities I've been seeing. I've been seeing a lot of business people. I've been spending a lot of time up in Watcheraker as well, and Tasman, obviously, because there's more population up there in our electorate than down here, so they have a big say on, theoretically, on how the makeup of coalition will go, like as far as the West Coast, Tasman is concerned. So I've been spending, good time up there. But yeah, that's not really answering the questions, but it is sort of tied up in there. But I actually want to learn from this team what they have got to take forward. That's what I've been going around and doing, collecting information from businesses, whoever, whatever entities there are, whether it's fishing, dairy company, DWC, and you've got the regional deal stuff that gets put together and goes through. And I've had ministers down here. I've tried to show them where those bits are and why, because there's nothing like being on the ground and understanding. And yes, Minister Meager the other day, he got to see what reclamation can look like in alluvial gold mining, where what the farming side looks like afterwards. He had no idea, so it was really good to be able to bring him to our patch. Got more coming, and reached out to others to come who may or may not get here, so they can see. Because otherwise, they're told it's this way and it was that way, and there's nothing like being on the ground to actually understand. I mean, until I think Maureen brought it up a while ago, they didn't have a clue that there was such an amount of alluvial mining on the coast. Didn't realise, a lot of people didn't know that there was, is it between 50 and 60? Somewhere in there, 5 plus. And so it's a big part of our economy. The more we do that, they make a big piece of it. But yeah, I would actually prefer if I had questions thrown at me that I might be able to ask than to, we should do one with this.
To tell us about climate adaptation and community resilience. What's your response to that issue for the West Coast?
Well, I guess in one aspect, when Mike Patrick was down in Invercargill last week, at the Quarries, seminar or, forum that was on, he sort of announced there that one of the things they're looking at with RMA reform is being able to get, a lot more permitted activities, and he saw gravel extraction as potentially being one of them, which would make a massive difference to the coast. It's, because there's a lot of strange rules. I mean, it's quite different at the other end. At least we can get in and do a bit of that down here. But I mean, at the other end at Tasman, it appears that they aggregate it and average it, and people are very frustrated. And you've seen the damage they've had with those flooding events up there, where rivers haven't been managed very well, or you're not allowed to get in advance when you see an issue coming. You know it's going to happen, and you aren't able to deal with it, so that you can save your infrastructure and make sure that roads don't get taken out, culverts, whatever. So that's the sort of thing that they're already working on, and that's feedback from the ground, right? People have really pushed that sort of stuff through, whereas, you know, as we know in previous couple of cycles of government, that sort of thing, the net got tighter on that sort of stuff, and being able to be proactive, preemptive on some of these things, especially on your own property. More and more impediment came on, been trying to remove that to help with that. So yeah, that climate resilience is, it's really good to know that adaptation's been put through now in the international IPCC stuff. I've been to a lot of climate COPs actually and seen how that works, and it's quite an eye-opener, let's put it that way. But one of them I was at, they finally said, we're putting it to adaptation now versus mitigation, which I think is quite important. And I think did you get a letter from Minister Watts, who's got some stuff through noting and asking councils to sort of try and understand how it fits with them, that the IPCC has said that it's unrealistic. The 8.5 report, which is 8.5 and 6 before it, what targets you had to reach were now unrealistic. So he's put that through so people can understand it and what that looks like, work out where you can go with that. So, I mean, there'll be more on that for sure. And as I say, I'm not privy to, as only being a candidate, they don't necessarily release all the things they're talking about to us well ahead, so that we can get a head around it necessarily, and for good reason, I guess, because you might be inexperienced in embargoes and jump the gun and different things. But yeah, there's a lot more to come, and I'm not necessarily over all of it for those very reasons. And I would love to be, because I'm very passionate about carbon policy, because I've seen the cost that it has all around the world in my role at World Farming Organisation. And it's often the people at the bottom of the food chain that are hammered the most. I mean, look at fuel prices and things. That's a bit to do with Iran, obviously, but businesses have got so much carbon cost embedded in energy prices now that it hurts. I mean, business down in Harry that folded when they couldn't meet the whole ETS prices. They sold that, and that was the second biggest employer, growing aubergines for the whole South Island. They employed 14 people. The school was more at 15, I believe, and here's bought it, and they grow tomatoes. Much smaller margin, but they can grow tomatoes because the weirdness of some of those, like ETS, is that they are deemed to be a competitive product. So they don't have to pay the carbon tax on the coal that goes into the boilers, whereas aubergines weren't seen as that, so you had to pay the carbon tax. It just kept going up and up. So I think there's a lot of things like that. That's my personal view, that we need to do a lot of tweaking on to make the best of the country and take it forward, and give us more dollars in the pot to do more climate resilience. The other side to that is you've got to have a bigger pie, and that's hence the free trade agreements. A lot more on the going forward into those massive markets that are coming, that are growing, like in Nigeria. It's on the second tranche will be done going forward. And we could see that coming when I was at Federated Farmers in Wellington. Daniela Spitalis, who's our head trade person, he was saying 8 years ago, trade is going to get hard. It's going to get real tight. Everyone was moving towards protectionist style. You know, the world is shifting, and the World Trade Organization wasn't having the punch it used to have, you know, down a judge. So it's very difficult. So I really applaud Todd McClay, how he's got on with free trade agreements, because they open the door for us to be able to have more options. And one of the big ones with the India one, of course, is coal. Coal exports, you know, the tariff drops dramatically. The numbers got out of my head right now, and I don't have it in front of me. But for the other end of this electorate, it's massive. For apples, wine comes down from 150% tariff to 25. I mean, wine needs all the help it can get at the moment. There's an awful lot of land up there in vines, and it's not doing so well. So it's, yeah, growing the pie so we can have more dollars coming in from export, because they're new money to New Zealand. They're not borrowed and they're not printed, and they're critical for our hospitals, our infrastructure, schools. These guys have also halved the cost of school rooms from 1.2 million to 600,000. They reckon they can cut them back some more. So it's trying to make the dollar go further, because the dollars are hard to come by at the moment, as you know. And yeah, we don't want to end up putting ourselves into more debt, driving inflation, or spraying money around, and which will drive interest rates up, which really hurts anybody, whether you're a council, a homeowner, a business owner. Doesn't matter what you do, money borrowed. That's tough, and that. So the more better you can drill all those areas, it leaves you more options, because there's money in the pot to do more, whatever it is you need to do about resilience for climate and adaptation to what's thrown at you. Because yeah, we're pretty vulnerable, right? We've got those big rivers, and they get out of bed and they do really awful things. Yeah, and the whole electorate's got that, you know. It's from Jackson's Bay, or from Big Bay, right up to Fairwell Spit, St Arnaud, Brightwater. There's nowhere that's not hurt by it. I'm driving through that Mochrie Valley and Mochiwaka Valley, seeing what they've had. And I mean, you've just had it now while I was away. Those big downpours, those thunderclaps that have just dropped water. Greymouth, Coyote Park was a classic the other night. Yeah, it's pretty interesting how quick we can, you know, suffer from that stuff. But that's, again, have we missed a trick over the years? We're not keeping up with maintenance and stuff. I don't know. But some of the power, the speed of that water and where it comes down, I think there's nothing you could do in some cases. Yeah.
As a farmer, Katie, you know, we obviously the big issue on the West Coast at the moment is pest control, pests, particularly ungulates. What can you tell us about your party's position in terms of biosecurity issues on the West Coast?
Yeah, well, again, they've got a national policy statement stuff, and James Meagher's just literally released something the last few days about how, as the Minister for Hunting and Fishing, and that's a real balance that's got to be struck, because there's a lot of people out there who, you know, love their hunting and fishing, and a lot of people are seeing that now as a resource and how we could utilise it, the ungulates, versus just leaving them dead on the hill, as the department has done for a long time. And that is quite a difficult one too, because it's probably, you know how it was when we didn't have a lot of deer. It was because a lot of private enterprise was out there doing that, and there was good money in it, and there was markets. So I think, you know, personally, that's the how we encourage or make that happen is a good part of it. Again, or it's got a part to play, put it that way. And I know there's been multiple attempts at that, or re-looking at it going forward. I know that at the moment there's abattoir in the south that's started up to do a bit of that. There's guys going around at the moment, around home, quite good. They've got licenses to shoot for pet food rather. And so hopefully that inroads will make a difference, all those little things. And I've also had a lot of people reach out to me and go, the problem is so big now, there needs to be a lot more done. But as I say, these guys who are now getting into the removal, and some of them actually pay the farmers $50. They rang them the other day and they said, oh, we'd actually pay you $50 a head, because it's just gone up $2.50 a kilo for these pet food ungulates. So $6 is the number. So we could see some pressure go off those areas through pricing mechanism. Yeah, the market always seems to work, sort of. But yeah.
Can I-
There's gotta be a mix.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Any questions?
Okay. But yeah, so it's not an easy one to figure out what the best way through is, but yeah, it's certainly on the agenda because it's a growing problem. And when I was on the conservation board, we kept raising it. We're getting these complaints about lots of ungulates around. And at that stage, nobody really wanted to look at it. To be fair, it was, ooh, let's not go there. And I presume because of funding issues of how you would do it. And there was multiple people putting ideas forward. Might be cheaper to throw a per head on it and let commercial people take them into their own market after that and find that balance of where you get your biggest bang for buck. But it's a big one because heaven forbid, I said if foot and mouth got to the shores of New Zealand and gets into pigs as well, you didn't mention those, you mentioned the goats and the deer. Well, we said ungulates, but how are we going to get rid of something as devastating as that if it gets out into those cloven hoof animals in the wild? So there's a good other economic reasons as to why we need to look at it, let alone the amount of tucker they eat and stealing off farms. But yeah, it's been looked at multiple times and it's time to start putting a stake in the ground and do some more about it. I know they put 30 million towards it a wee while ago. But yeah, it's a drip in the bucket. But I think private enterprise is going to have a big role to play in this if we want to get on top of it. It's been proven before, from when they figured out they could shoot from helicopters. And it made a massive difference. And the forest health improved. And there's another reason we need to keep forest health up, is because it could end up making a massive difference. The sequestration stuff's being done now, Predator Free South Westland, which I was the chair of, they are doing, they've got measurements going on in the forest where there is predators, where there isn't, to see what forest health does and how much more sequestration forest can take up. And it does take up quite a lot more. And so maybe that's an answer to some of those emissions that we've got to pay for through that mechanism as well. So healthy forests bring a lot of other benefits that we didn't know about 5 years ago. So.
Thanks, Katie. All right, so and now we'll open up to questions from councillors. And Andy, you had a question?
Yeah, just for Katie, like I had an email from a fellow the other day. He's a professional hunter and hunting for commercially and for human consumption. And the regulations are just stifling. Like they'll go and get permission to hunt a farm and they've got to get all the other people within 4 kilometres of them to sign a paper to say that there's no poison or any stuff. And it's just impossible for.
Well, that's exactly what the guy turned up at home, and I signed for him because I knew we hadn't done any poisoning or any sprays as well. And I totally agree. It's really hard because for human consumption, if we get it wrong, and years ago they had it wrong with something got exported. I think it had been drenched in the end was a problem, and a pour on, and it got picked up at borders. So I understand why they've got such a lot around that food security part because their trade deals hang off it. We have tried to look at the pathway through that because it's mainly around Ridipiku is the hard one, and it's very, very, very low risk. And I mean, some of the work that Predator Free's been doing down there about how you can put it in a dispenser that's cow-proof, goat-proof, venison-proof, if you like, deer-proof, is one of the keys to that technology that will allow that to be changed. But yeah, I totally understand. And I've been pushing this for a while myself within different organisations and to try and hurry up and move that along because see those deer numbers building up. I mean, we've got them too on the wall.
But they are a resource.
Absolutely.
And they'll generate income for our country.
Mm. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
And just the other thing, like the other day we had a hell of a windstorm and we would have lost a lot of native logs into the blown over. Well, we need to be able to harvest them as well.
Absolutely we do, yeah. And how that pans out with the, you know, Conservation Bill Act going through, not exactly sure, to be fair, but you know, that's something that does get raised. That, and we have had those exemptions in the past when there's a big windstorm. And then they got some utilisation out of that, but not as much as they could have at that time either, to be fair.
But-
it was pretty hard to do.
Every New Zealander benefits from
Yes. Yeah,
No.
she's worth, what is it, premium with at the moment, about 19,
it.
20 grand.
Something.
Yeah, cube, she's milled
Yeah.
out, she's pretty expensive. Yeah.
Okay,
I've got a question, just probably, not a word of advice, but if you've got ministers coming over, organise a tour to Stockton, the Out West tours. Well worth it. It's a great eye opener. So it shows you landscape before mining,
Yes.
shows you landscape after mining.
Yeah.
Quite the transformation. And a lot of them talk about coal mining and think it's a really dirty thing and that, but actually it's not.
No, and I've been up there 3 times, twice the Conservation Board, and just recently went up and looked.
On the Out West tours.
I went with that, there's,
Yeah, okay.
yep.
It's a good, you know, it's a real eye opener because a lot of people think that we climb into a hole in the ground for it.
Yeah, and it is, and I was intrigued to see from last time I visited with the Conservation Board to now, some of the new learnings they've got about, you know, picking up the whole,
Rehab.
yeah, in the rehab space versus, yeah, the way they do it. I mean, that's the brilliance of it, right? Responsible mining, everyone's learning all the time, trying to do better and do it more efficiently. So there's more benefit for everybody and give everyone confidence that what they're doing adds value. And some of my friends who are, you know, involved with Kiwi at Paparoa and so on, you know, they said they couldn't do it without the input. They wouldn't have made as much success as what they have with, you know, breeding more Kiwi if it wasn't for the mining money.
Yep.
So it's doing some really good predator control work and in those endangered species areas as well.
Absolutely.
People are, it worries me that people are willing to turn that off. Quite horrifying, really, because they're not given the full facts and don't do their own research.
They're only wanting to hear what they want to hear, really.
okay, any, Peter?
Yeah, just one touch on fuel and energy, Katie. One thing that, you know, every dollar counts, as you mentioned before. And the thing that concerns me, the coast economy runs on wheels. Every time there's a fuel crisis or such, the government will give free public transport for buses and all the rest of it. And, they don't seem to get the message that we have no public transport on the West Coast. We pay the highest prices anyway, some of the highest prices in the country. I think some of them want to clear their ears out. Listen, we haven't got public transit, so what's in it for rural New Zealand? Nothing. It needs to be addressed. The second thing is predator control, pest control. I think DOC have flown the white flag on predator control. It's out of their hands now. They can't control it. And I just think that farmers, local landowners, they do their share above and beyond their 50% of the land usage in the coast. DOC states 85%, they should be paying 85% of the pest control that comes off their land onto private land, because that is the pantry, that is the causing the issue. And if no Tim Wallace is going to come back flying and get rid of the helicopters like 30, 40 years ago, that days are gone. So there is a problem, we've got to address it, we've got to fund it adequately, and they should pay what they should be paying, and their fair share is 80% of the problem.
It is a tough one for the coast, no doubt about it. We've got all that DOC estate and you want a good name there. You don't want vermin coming across, whether it's weeds or whatever. And yeah, the proving out at landscape scale the predator-free stuff was quite good, and we've done that further south. And it's just, that might be the most economic way is push further and further. You know, no one wants to talk about it, but you do collect a few ungulates along the way. Let's be honest. And that's probably made a difference over the time. And I mean, it's with Osprey, with having TB nearly under control, we're going to see a rise in the numbers of different vermin for sure. So yeah, it's definitely got to have a find the balance somewhere, find the money to get on top of it. But it would be nice to think that there's an opportunity with private enterprise to to create those markets again and be able to do it that way, because it's always done more efficiently. It's not left up to them, to be fair. You know, less government in your life, not more, is one of the values of the National Party, and it's one of the reasons I put my hand up. So, yeah.
Hey, Chris, any questions?
Thanks.
Ash, any questions? No, thanks very much, Kate, for your input, both for those online and our community who are watching online. We appreciate you coming along today and giving your time and feeding back on those questions.